Warning: this story contains adult themes, foul language, and some decently graphic violence. Viewer discretion is absolutely advised. What lengths will a king go to ensure order, a duchess to preserve her power, and a father to protect his daughter? Today, we go back to the year 854 to see just what dark secrets lurk in the depths of the Vampiric Citadel. Hi, guys. My name is Trevor Austin, and welcome back to another story of magic, monsters, and history. I hope you guys have a good snack, a good drink, and found somewhere comfy, because today we're going to forget about our problems for just a little while. I present to you Rain, as written by Trevor Austin. The winds whipped violently around, the snowfall blocking out the mountains, earth, and sky. From the snowblind emerged a figure, a red cloak wrapped around his face, his crimson gaze focused on the path before him, his armor clanking with each step, the snow crunching beneath his feet. Within his arms, a bundle, wrapped tight. A shrill screech pierced the air from behind him. He turned, but for a moment, and stared into the whirling snowfall. The child cooed within his arms. He looked down at her. "Hush now, my beautiful girl. We will find our way." He spoke caringly. With begrudging steps, he pushed onwards into the unknown. The day before, he'd found himself at home, gazing into the hearth. Behind him, in an oaken chair, sat his beautiful Tullia, staring down at her own joy. The last hours had been miraculous. The child was born to them, and with each second the rush of joy which filled her heart vanished from his own. "They will come for her," his words hung heavy, "if they have not already heard your screams." Tullia held out her hand, and he crossed the room to her. "My Rain, we can bask in her presence a moment longer. We will plan our leave tomorrow." Tullia spoke, putting her hand upon his cheek. Rain placed his hand upon hers and brought it to his chest. "Time is a luxury we've grown accustomed to, a luxury we no longer have." Rain's voice drifted, tired and weary. Tullia sighed, yet her smile never truly left her face. "I know the laws of the Citadel as well as you." Her voice soft as she pulled her hand and brought it to her child, who clasped a finger in their own tiny hands. "Give me a moment more before you take her from me." Rain gazed into the ruby eyes of his daughter before turning his head away. His knees wished to buckle, but he held himself steady. He placed his hand upon the mantel above the fire to steady himself, closing his eyes to hold back the pain so that Tullia would not see. Yet she heard the hiss of his tears on the stones of the hot hearth. The silence between them was louder than any sob could emote. For 7 centuries, the Vampiric Citadel lay within the northern cliffs of the Baltic Sea, still shiny and new by their standards. And there, within its depths, that the child was born, first of her kind in the annals of history, for it was that by their laws that their kind was sired, not born. "The Duchess," Tullia broke the silence. "She knows of tunnels, practically built this place herself. We could flee to the Southlands." Rain exhaled and turned to her. "The Duchess holds little favor with the king. She would not risk being put through the right early. Besides, your home fell centuries ago." "Rome still stands in the east," Tullia rebutted. For a moment they locked eyes, a duel neither would back down from. Rain gritted his teeth. Fine, I shall speak with her. But no, I do not believe they will let us be. Wherever we go, they will look for her. But I will try. For you, my love. Tullia rose from her chair, and the two met in the center of the room, their daughter between them. You're a good man. I would love you in any other life, wherever it would lead us. Tullia placed her head upon his chest. And so he departed for the door, looking back at his family. Take only what we will need. I will return shortly. Rain pushed through the giant doors of the Duchess's great hall. The room was alive with laughter and cheers. Vikinger raised mugs of blood and mead. Many Rain himself had gone raiding with before they were all turned. They adorned their armor and ate of the corpses of mortals that lay across the tables, the floors around them soaked in blood. At the far back of the room sat a massive sandstone throne, adorned in gold and blue paints. Upon it sat Cleopatra, Duchess of the second ring of the Citadel. The signs of feralism had begun to set in upon her beauty, skin pulled just a bit too tight, and a headdress to hide her thinning hair, a fate that comes for all vampires in due time. She had once ruled a land to the far south, a place Rain had only heard of. The walls and pillars of her great hall were decorated to reflect the halls of her own homeland. Around her lay several servants who bore their shame to the world and caressed the body of their duchess. Come, my bloodhound, are you here to service me, or have they run out of drink? Cleopatra spoke to Rain as he approached. Rain dropped to his knee. My Duchess, succubus of the Citadel, mistress of the Blood Moon, I have come to plead for your favor. Rain's voice trembled. Cleopatra leaned her head back and looked him up and down. And you are my knight? She asked him. I am Rain Ivarson, the 18th steward of your ring, mistress, he answered her. Cleopatra rolled her head to the side before taking in a large breath. Oh yes, Tullia's plaything. How could I forget a face so rugged? She said with drive in her voice. Rain averted his gaze from hers. My mistress, it was Tullia who has sent me. She wishes to speak to you of bloodlines. Rain spoke with hesitation. Cleopatra sat upright. A grin cracked across her face, her maw filled with sharp fangs. Without breaking her gaze on Rain, she spoke, whispered and quick. Leave us. And the room fell silent as her voice carried across. The legions placed down their mugs and filed out through the grand doors. Rain finally looked up at Cleopatra. No warriors, no servants, just them. She stared at him for what felt like an endless time. She's with the child now? Cleopatra's words floated down to him. Yes, somewhere safe, but we cannot leave. Not without an army blocking our path. Rain spoke, the fear trickling into his words. No, couldn't, she commented. I would not ask you to defy the king, he continued. No, you wouldn't, she commented again, still grinning ear to ear. We must leave. If we stay, he'll make an example out of us. Put us through the rite of ash. You feast too lavishly of the second ring. Surely you must know of the hidden means to bring in your luxuries. He spoke with worry. You forget your place, she calmly reminded him. My apologies, my mistress. I am desperate, he apologized. A father always is, Cleopatra spoke as she rose from her throne. But you are not mistaken. I was here long before the wretch Ozymandias. I was here before these halls, turned by the Moon Queen herself, and I helped to build this very hall, this citadel, in her honor. I do have means of my own, beyond his sight. Rain practically leapt to his feet. Then you shall help. We will give you what little we have, Rain pleaded once more. Cleopatra gestured to the door. Go to her. Rain, on command, turned and hurried for the door. He continued his pace through the halls, nearly skipping every other step while restraining a sprint. As he rounded the corner to the sire dwellings, Rain stopped dead in his tracks. Guards, the Vikinger that were sent away, patrolled the hall. 2 stood at the door to Tullia's dwelling. Rain's heart was conflicted. He knew he could never be victorious against all the guards, but he couldn't bring himself to stand by and watch his family fall before him. And so, as he took a step, he saw Tullia being dragged by the arms as 2 more guards emerged from the dwelling. They took her and dropped her on the floor. She had been beaten and was bloodied. Her eyes locked with his own, and with tears in his eyes, Rain placed his hand upon his sword. She mouthed to him but a single word. No. Where is the child? A guard screamed as he brought the bottom of his boot down upon her face. Rain's breathing intensified. His scattered thoughts collapsed into one truth. Tullia had hidden their daughter, and there was only one place she could be. In the early days after she had turned him, they had stolen away to the bone pits of the second ring, a place hidden away from those who hide from the world. Rain dropped into the pits with a mighty crash. He began to push aside piles of bones in decay with heavy breaths. He pushed through the piles with rage, punching and kicking them, punishing himself, for his desperation had blinded him to one truth. Cleopatra had never agreed to help, and in his own desperation he had been the one to betray himself, to betray Tullia. Rain fell to his knees, unable to catch his breath. He gasped again and again, and with each breath his exhales released more of the anger from the depths of his being, until his breaths had transformed into screams, hurled into the darkness of the bone pit. And there, Rain was left alone, alone to sob, alone to be broken. Until a cry broke through, his last light calling to her father. Rain barely made it to his feet as he turned to run to her, and in the far corner of the pits he found his armor, leather and fur, piled among the bones. And beneath the armor, wrapped in his cloak, was his daughter. Rain scooped her up in his arms and held her almost too tight. My girl, my girl, my girl. The tears streamed down his face as he spoke. He then donned his armor and tore a piece of his cloak, wrapping her tightly in a bundle. This will keep you comfortable. Oh, please, stay quiet, Rain asked of his child. Rain climbed from the pits, his daughter tucked beneath his cloak. The halls were crowded with the processions as they headed to the surface for the rite of ash. Rain slid into line with those of the second ring as they walked, his cloak blending in with the sea of red robes. Guards stood at the ready by every corner and every door, their eyes gazing across every member of the crowd. Rain shuffled one foot after the other, hiding his face below his hood. It was when they reached the first ring that a guard had put a hand to the chest of the man in front of him. The guard scanned the man up and down before moving his hand to the man's shoulder and pushing him along. The child, after the disturbance, began to coo and fuss. Rain's eyes widened and darted from wall to wall. No one had heard her yet. So, from his chest he hummed a soft and somber tune, reminiscent of a tune his own mother would sing to put him at ease. Though he could no longer recall the words, the tune persisted within his mind, and so he hummed to her, and her sound was covered. The vampiric hordes shuffled into the snow-covered peaks outside, hours before the dawn. In a small valley near the hidden door to the citadel stood the ruins of a fallen temple, built to worship the gods of ice and snow, and there, in the ruins, they gathered for the rite. Rain had stepped to the side once in the open, standing, now acting as a guard. Once the procession passed, he turned and headed eastbound to where he knew not. His only hope was that his cloak would shield them from the sun's wrathful light. And as Rain climbed the mountains, Tullia was left a prisoner on the verge of obliteration. As the crowds gathered, 200,000 strong, she was placed before them, her arms and legs tied to a cross, a tradition the citadel had picked up from her old home hundreds of years ago. To either side stood 5 crosses. Upon them were not so-called criminals, as she was labeled, but those called the Ancients. The ones who had lived too long and had succumbed to the fatalism of the mind. Yet their bodies persisted, their limbs thin and skin pulled too tight, hair gone but a few strands. While they once had 2 fangs, their mouths now had countless sharp razors protruding out from their jaws. The Ancients all writhed and pulled at their bindings, screaming at the crowds that gathered before them. Tullia, however, sat still, her head hung silently. For she had accepted her fate, and she knew her daughter was safe, that Rain would never surrender. The 9 dukes and duchesses of the citadel had gathered before the crowd, sitting upon wooden thrones, left by those who built the temple. Cleopatra, who was among them, rose and approached Tullia. Tullia bore her teeth as Cleopatra placed her hand upon her cheek. "Oh, my dear Tullia, you have sired so many in my name. But when I allowed you to keep one, I never thought you'd fall in love." Cleopatra mocked her with a seductive tone. She pulled her hand back with a sudden force, cutting into Tullia's face with her nails. You did this. I trusted you, worshipped you." The words scraping through Tullia's gritted teeth. "Trust is for lesser beings." Cleopatra's tone turned to wrath. "If there is a world after, you will be reunited with your toy. I've seen to it your little family is dead."
"You lie to her and yourself."
His voice was ominous and heavy. Cleopatra's eyes widened and her jaw quivered. Ozymandias towered behind her. He was covered head to toe in a golden robe, and upon his face he donned a gold mask, expressionless, He approached Tullia and leaned in to look her in the eye, so close that Tullia could see the red of his eyes beneath the slits in the mask.
It is not every day one dares to break the laws the Citadel imposes. Most...
Ozymandias' voice drifted off as he turned to face Cleopatra.
know better.
He turned back to Tullia and backed away from her slightly.
You are almost as old as Cleopatra, are you not? Ashamed to lose a sire of your caliber. Oh yes, I've been told all about you, Tullia, and your mate, Rain. It doesn't matter now. He has fled the Citadel. My scouts tell me he's going to cross the mountains. The storm approaches, and we may even lose him. He's very irritating. I'm forced to get creative.
Ozymandias informed Tullia. Great One, allow me to send my soldiers. The old tribes lived in this terrain. They will know how to... Cleopatra pleaded with the vampire king.
No, this spectacle has proven enough. You are incapable of putting your pride aside for the good of the Citadel.
Ozymandias reprimanded Cleopatra. But I told you about the child, Cleopatra protested.
And you believed this would gain you my favor? Let me make myself very clear. I have no need for you. In 100 years you will be strung up, a mindless ancient. The only reason you are not alongside her and the others now is I cannot be bothered to replace you yet.
Ozymandias' rage seethed in every word. Cleopatra sputtered, looking for words but could find none. She silently hung her head and returned to her wooden throne. Ozymandias then turned to the nearest guard who stood post.
Take these ancients down and release them into the wilds. They will find our fugitive,
Ozymandias commanded. He then walked forward and stood above the thrones facing the cheering crowd. One of the dukes raised his hand, and the crowd fell deathly silent.
Denizens of the Citadel, we gather here today under the lights of our 1,000 suns to honor the powers bestowed to us and to punish she who has forsaken the gifts. Tullia of the Second Ring has broken our law. They shall not multiply, for the lust is born of death and rebirth. She has brought forth an unnatural abomination, and I have seen to it this child was destroyed.
Ozymandias' voice boomed across the ruined structure, echoing off of half-broken columns. The crowds roared with cheers and applause.
For her sins she is sentenced to the rite of ash, and let her become cleansed through flame and dust. For we are the stewards of this world, called to a higher purpose than mortal life, the ones who cull empires and break those who would destroy and dominate. It is we who preserve the natural order, and we must do so by removing the weak, the traitors, and the atrocious.
Ozymandias turned and looked at Tullia. His gaze lingered for a moment too long. Tullia furrowed her brow and met his eyes. He shook his head and walked away from the crowds, who still roared with cheers and hurled insults towards Tullia. The crowd thinned and faded as the procession returned to the darkness of the citadel. Poor Tullia was left alone in the snow, and as the dawn came, she looked out upon the pretty reds and oranges and the growing blues of the sky, a sight she had not seen in a near millennium. She thought of rain. She thought of the daughter she never got to name. She smiled, and the sun rose, peeking over the horizon. Her skin began to smoke and sizzle. Her breathing intensified, and yet she smiled on. With a flash, Tullia burst into an inferno of flame, and she finally let out a scream with all her might. Anger, love, loss, hope, all in one sound. The winds whipped violently around, the snowfall blocking out the mountains, earth, and sky. From the snow-blind, Rain emerged, the red cloak wrapped around his face, his crimson gaze focused on the path before him. His armor clinking with each step, the snow crunching beneath his feet. Within his arms, his daughter, wrapped tight. A shrill screech pierced the air from behind him. He turned but for a moment and stared into the whirling snowfall. The child cooed within his arms. He looked down at her. "Hush now, my beautiful girl. We will find our way," he spoke caringly. With begrudging steps, he pushed onwards into the unknown. The sun dared not touch them here, not for now, and while the storm was brutal, Rain prayed it would last. He continued his path eastbound. He still assumed, anyway. Till suddenly the snow before him gave way, and he was met with a cliff face. He steadied his footing, his breath rapid. The screams of the ancients grew louder as they came closer. "I wouldn't recommend that way," a voice came from the storm. From the snowblind emerged a man, skin bronze and weathered with age. He donned a white bearskin cloak and held a staff of white dead wood that glowed with unburning embers. Rain placed his free hand upon his sword hilt. "No, my friend, I am a traveler of sorts. I've been searching for your citadel for quite some time, yet it seems fate has led me right to where I am needed." The stranger spoke with caution.
"Who are you?"
Rain questioned. Now that is a question that is difficult to answer. "Call me Snilgardatha," the stranger informed him. "A magician. You're vampire hunters. You have come to kill her too," Rain accused. "That is a misconception, friend. Most do not hunt your kind. Another lie the vampiric law spreads." Snilgardatha continued on. "I am not here to harm the girl. Quite the opposite." Snilgardatha's giddy smile faded to a frown. "I'm afraid the powers that be, ones greater than your citadel, and even I understand, have led me here to save her. You will not outrun the ancients. The blade you carry is iron, not silver. I'm afraid you will die here, for it is your story," Snilgardatha explained. Rain looked down at the child and then at Snilgardatha, then down at his girl again. She smiled at him and spit up small bubbles. "Please, friend, I do not even know your name, but I have seen your story, your wife, the betrayal, her death in the sun. I heard her. I will care for the girl, raise her to be good and kind, raise her as you would have. Snilgandather pleaded. The world slowed around Rain as he stared into the eyes of his daughter. In that moment, the terror, the grief, was gone. "Oh, my beautiful girl, do not mourn me. Do not cry for your mother. Do not mourn the life we would have lived together, for we loved you. Live a good life. Live a happy life. Live a peaceful life. Be strong and be great." Rain bowed farewell to his child. "If you are a god sent by the Norns, if there are gods left in Asgard, you will keep her safe, or my soul will hunt you. I will crawl from Valhalla and burn the realms till my blade steams with your blood. You will know my name, for as long as you draw breath, I am Rain. She will pray my name into the dark, to know my soul gleams on." Rain vowed with a renewed anger. He walked over and handed his last light to the magician. "Not hell?" Snuggledother asked. Rain placed his hand on Snuggledother's shoulder. "I'm going to buy you time," Rain spoke. The Snuggledother nodded and walked forth into the storm, stopping to look back one more time before disappearing from view. Rain drew his sword, blade to the ground. He waited, standing still. Minutes passed and the screams grew louder. Rain, in his mind, pictured the face of his beloved. The curve of her lips, a sweet smile accented by blood. Her cheeks, which used to plump when she smiled. Her jaw, sharp but stunning, and the way her milk-white hairs graced her face, obscuring, striking red eyes, which glistened with their original green in the right angle of the moonlight. For a moment the cold left him, and he could not hear the winds. In the vast dark, he once again felt her hand upon his face. Whispered words filled his quiet mind as they drifted off her lips. "Find me, my love." Rain took in a steadying breath as he once again became aware of his surroundings. "My love, I would climb Yggdrasil to spot you." His eyes shot open as one of the ancients leapt forward from the storm, its mouth wide and arms outstretched. Rain grabbed it by the throat and slammed it into the ground. With his free hand, he jammed his sword into its face repeatedly. It wouldn't be enough to kill it, but it would have to take time to regenerate its brain. Rain's teeth gritted so tight that his own fangs cut into his gums. Another ancient emerged from behind, leaping towards him. He sliced the sword upward across its chest and sent it flying to his other side and over the cliff, the ancient grabbing at the snow as it slid over the edge. Two more emerged, encircling him. Rain grasped his sword with both hands, turning repeatedly to face each foe. The ancients both charged. Rain took the one on his left, dodging a swipe from its hand. It swung with its other, to which Rain swung his sword, severing its arm at the elbow. The ancient to his right slashed at him. Its claws cut through the armor and into his back. Rain let out a shout that the gods could have heard from Asgard. He spun his sword, holding it backwards, and jammed it into the leg of the ancient that struck him. This gave him a moment to back away from the two. A third appeared. Standing behind him, Rain on instinct turned and slashed its throat. The ancient stepped back, grabbing its neck and choking. The one-armed ancient stepped forward. Rain swiped his sword at it, slicing it in his chest, keeping it at bay. More ancients came from the storm, surrounding him. Rain spun, slicing his sword wildly into the air. Come on! I have somewhere to be! Rain taunted them. Rain's skin slightly fizzled at the sunlight, which faintly broke through the blizzard. He glanced down momentarily at the smoke coming from his arm when an ancient came from behind him and bit into his neck. Rain gurgled up blood and stabbed his sword into its head. The ancient stumbled back as it attempted to pull the sword free. Rain, blood-soaked, smiled and held up his fists. Another lunged at him from his right side. He punched it in the face, then again in the gut. As Rain raised his fist to strike again, the one-armed ancient bit into his hand. The throat-sliced ancient struck his back, forcing him to his knees. A third one tore at Rain's face. Rain used his free arm to try and push it away, but no longer had the strength, and it ripped his arm from his body. The remaining ancients pinned him to the ground. They tore and clawed at Rain like a pack of wolves, leaving pieces too small to regenerate. Nothing left to be. Rain, to his last breath, fought and thrashed. Upon reaching the base of the mountains, Snilgoldather turned to look upon the dark storm that encircled the peaks. A long, shrill scream echoed, faint and distant. He turned back to look at the bundle in his arm, the child completely covered to hide her from the gleaming sun. Snilgoldather chuckled to himself. "You're safe now, Astius." Breaks your heart, doesn't it? That was Rain by Trevor Austin. And if you guys want to see other stories from the Magic Monsters and History collection, go check out my channel right now. There's 2 of them up and many more to come. Oh, and if you guys want to, don't be afraid to like and subscribe and leave a comment telling me what you thought of this story. That being said, thank you guys. Have a fantastic day.